Only this 28 years later story can justify the sequel's riskiest release decision. It's not every day that a franchise waits nearly 3 decades between installments, and even rarer that its creators attempt to make that long wait part of the narrative's core appeal. But with 28 years later, the bold, time-jumping follow-up to Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, a massive risk is being taken. After nearly 20 years of radio silence, and with horror cinema evolving rapidly, the very idea of revisiting this universe feels audacious. And yet, there's a glimmer of promise here. For this high-stakes gamble to pay off, only one kind of story can truly justify such a dangerous move. A generational reckoning set in a world that has learned to live with the rage virus until it erupts again. The risk, relevance, and reinvention. The release of 28 years later comes with a mountain of narrative and thematic risks. Not only must it recapture the original's gritty, hyperreal tension, but it must also engage a new generation of viewers raised on fast-paced, glossier zombie media like The Last of Us, World War Z, and Train to Busan. The film can't just echo the past, it must evolve beyond it. But here's the key challenge. How do you sell a sequel that dares to lean into the real-time gap? Most franchises reboot or retcon. This one is doubling down on its timeline. It's not just a sequel, it's a statement. And for that to work, the story must reflect the weight of those missing years in a way that both new and old fans can feel. The premise that could save it. A world rebuilt on fragile peace. Imagine this. It's been 28 years since the original outbreak. The rage virus is believed to be extinct, eradicated, studied, quarantined to mythology. Britain has long since stabilized, becoming an authoritarian health state with strict biosecurity laws. The trauma of the past lingers in policy, in surveillance, in a society raised with whispered bedtime horror stories about red-eyed monsters who scream instead of speak. A generation has grown up in the aftermath, never having seen a single infected person, but haunted by the fear of becoming one. What happens when these myths become real again? When a buried secret, or a weaponized virus strain, is unleashed in a world convinced it had moved on? This approach would reframe the story from mere survival horror to a deeper psychological exploration of generational memory, hubris, and the cost of complacency. It would no longer just be about surviving a new outbreak. It would be about facing the consequences of believing the nightmare was over. Legacy characters as symbols, not crutches. There's been buzz about Cillian Murphy potentially returning. If he does, it can't just be fan service. He must represent the old world confronting the new. His character, Jim, could now be a broken man, a symbol of a generation that saw the collapse and tried to rebuild, only to realize the rot was never cured, only buried. Jim could serve as a Cassandra figure, someone who knows the virus never truly dies, only mutates. He could be a warning that trauma suppressed becomes trauma repeated. Seeing Jim try to protect a world that mocks his paranoia would create a heartbreaking mirror to his role in 28 Days Later, from survivor to prophet. Rage 2.0. Reinventing the horror. If 28 years later is to justify its existence, the horror must evolve. A new strain of the virus, subtly different, could elevate the stakes. What if this version doesn't just trigger blind aggression, but manipulates empathy, trust, or memory? What if the infected can appear normal for hours or days? This would shake the foundation of safety. No longer can you run or shoot your way out. Now, anyone could be the next outbreak. This twist would also reframe the original theme. Rage isn't just violence, it's the unraveling of human connection. That emotional uncertainty, rather than just action-driven horror, is what would make this sequel genuinely terrifying. The real horror, a society that forgot. Perhaps the scariest part of 28 years later isn't the virus, It's how quickly people forget. The new world might be clean, organized, comfortable. But it's built on a silent lie, that the rage virus is gone forever. The story must show how the systems that rose from fear have made the world brittle, vulnerable to collapse. A population unprepared, a government in denial, and science manipulated for control. This is how horror returns, not just as a monster, but as a mirror. Why it could work. By anchoring the story in the psychological, political, and generational